All right, Gaza War Day 324. I've got John here. Hey, John.
Hey, Justin, thank you for having me on your program.
As always, it is an honor to have you, John. Um, so we have today, this morning, Hizbollah said that they hit various targets in Israel as part of their response to the assassination of Fouad Shokr about 4 weeks ago now. And Hassan Nasrallah did a speech, so we are here to break it down.
Yeah,
Um, so he started by talking about praising the Iraqis for the pilgrimage and the religious significance of the day, and the Lebanese prime minister who died, maybe of natural causes, Salim al-Has, and then got into the what they're calling the Day of Arbaeen operation.
he's
So the
very
Day of
polite. He
Arbaeen,
always starts, he's very polite. He never skips, no matter how
yeah,
important the speech is, he never skips that part. But yeah, let's just
this
give like a quick rundown. So there was 320
which he corrected to 340.
to 340. The Israelis say 240 rockets fired, and then tens of drones,
Tens of drones is what he
tens of
said. But
drones.
he
So the
didn't want to
rockets
tell
were
you the details. Yeah.
yeah, I didn't want to tell us the number of drones. So hundreds of rockets, roughly double the highest day of rockets. And then those rockets were aimed at bases in the north and in the Golan. And they were designed to tie up the Iron Dome for the second wave, which was the drone strikes that were deep into Israel in the outskirts of Tel Aviv against Israeli military intelligence and the Air Force, which he said were the two people responsible for the Fouad Shokr assassination.
Exactly.
Just to start that off for people.
Do you want to also, before we go into details about what he said, talk about what the Israelis said happened?
So the Israelis said that they preempted the strike. The Hezbollah operation was 5:15 in the morning after Fajr prayer, and Israel said that they preempted the strike by hitting with 100 fighter jets scrambled because they're at the maximum alert, right? They've been at the maximum alert for weeks now. So they were able to scramble 100 separate fighter jets for this operation, in which they say they hit something like 50 different targets. They claim that preempted the strike, but as we'll find out in this Nasrallah speech, Nasrallah disagrees with that assessment. So Israel's calling it a victory. One soldier was killed. They're saying was killed by a Tamar Iron Dome missile interceptor, and two other sailors seriously injured on a warship that was targeted by a drone. And
And
the Israelis are saying it was shrapnel.
Israel said that Hezbollah was going to launch 6,000 rockets, that they destroyed 50 launch sites by scrambling 200 planes. I saw 200. You said 100?
100 planes, 200 airstrikes.
They did 200. So I'm not sure how you destroy 6,000 rocket launchers. Maybe each rocket launcher was going to launch a bunch of rockets.
I think that what they did, they calibrated it down today. The spokesperson said it was thousands of launch tubes.
Oh,
So,
they
so,
destroyed tubes.
so the
So
like
every
multiple launch rocket system.
every airstrike destroys at least 5 tubes.
Well, yeah, because the multiple rocket launcher would have like,
Eight tubes.
somewhere between 8 and 30
Okay.
or 28, whatever the
Okay,
four by
good. So
four
yeah,
by.
if they had 30 each and you did 200 airstrikes, hit every single one, then yeah, that would be 6,000 tubes. So there.
Yeah,
Um, and Netanyahu said something like it's not over yet, and this has gotten us closer to getting our land back, kind of thing, I think he said. So Netanyahu's feeling good. Um, and
But that's the thing
everybody.
about a military censor, right? They have a military censor that nobody can speak against or they go to jail. So they have the ability on, especially on incidents like this, where it's being reported in real time or within several hours. The military censor is capable of keeping all information of what actually happened inside Israel a secret, right? We talked about it, I know, a number of times on the sit reps, but it's like it's always got to be repeated that they have a military censor that everyone in the country is uh like on threat of jail
But okay,
has to observe.
yeah. But there's a military censor that says you're not allowed to talk about your losses or whatever. But like
Exactly. And you're
that
not
doesn't
allowed to
mean
talk
they're
about the
not telling
capabilities of Hezbollah either. So
that doesn't mean they're not telling the truth about destroying 800,000 rocket launch sites, right? I mean, they could still be telling the truth about that.
Nasrallah did, not to skip ahead, but he did say that their lies are like a Hollywood studio. But let's do his speech. Let's go through his
Okay.
speech in order because I
So
think it's important.
so
Hezbollah
that
obviously thought it was important because he came out and spoke
the same
and they
day.
announced that he was going to
Yeah.
speak by like 6 a.m. They had announced that
Yeah.
he was going to speak.
So they were very they wanted to I guess they also knew the Israelis were going to lie about it or put out their version of it.
Yeah, one
Um
of the reasons that Nasrallah said that he spoke was so that people in Lebanon could relax, or like, yeah, actually, I think he literally said that.
yeah, yeah. I think well
Makes
let's
sense.
talk more about that when we get to it because that was near the end
Yeah, let's
and
start from
it's
the top.
interesting about the idea of relaxing. So he said we were the timing. So the first discussion is a discussion of why they waited so long.
Yeah,
And there are several reasons why they waited so long. One was and everything we said. One is that they were worried that the the air defense that they were putting in place in the state of red alert, they were worried about the possibility of the operation failing if they were hasty. They could have run into new defenses that they hadn't planned for. They were deciding whether to go everybody, Yemen, Iran, and Hezbollah all go at the same time, or whether to go in different times. So that took time to coordinate that. They also want to give time to see whether the negotiations went anywhere. And I mean that also, even the way he said it was that it was more about optics
yeah,
um, than anything else. But he said once we realized it was going nowhere, we decided to go ahead.
yeah. And then they also said which they discussion about which were the targets, and then also that what we've been saying for the last few weeks is that the delay is part of the punishment psychologically, morally, and financially, which dovetails with the state of alert because the Israelis and the Americans were both in a state of alert, and the Americans have mobilized this, uh, you know, extreme force posture in the region with tens of billions,
Yeah,
if not hundreds of billions of dollars worth of warships and aircraft carriers and electronic warfare systems, all kinds of systems that could, according to Nasrallah, I think fairly, could have
yeah,
foiled an attack. So
yeah,
they wanted
yeah.
to make sure that they had their ducks in a row.
So then this is something that really jumped out at me right from the beginning was he said we set our standards for the attack, the objectives. And he said it we decided even though the Israelis hit civilians that we were not going to hit civilians. We were going to hit a military target. It had to be a military target and related to the where the planning and the intellectual authorship of the assassination of Fouad Shokr was. So the military intelligence and the Air Force. It's interesting too because he kind of said, no, he said more or less directly that they don't target civilians because it makes it harder for Israelis to target their civilians, which I don't know if that's true, but I guess if he thinks it's true, Israelis always target civilians, so
They target
maybe,
less civilians. How about that? I mean, how about
maybe,
that?
maybe.
But
I
yeah,
just,
he's all
like the logic in the logic on each front is different for Israel, right? Like Israel is just simply trying to genocide people in Gaza. There's
Yeah.
nothing people in Gaza could do or not do that would protect civilians in terms of, you know, preventing Israel from doing something. But maybe presumably the Lebanese front works differently for Israel. They think about it differently. It occupies a different place in their minds.
And he's speaking to Lebanese civilians as well, right? So he wants
Yeah.
to always underscore the point that he's not just rushing them into
Yeah.
destruction, right?
Yeah. So those are the standards. Then there's quite a lot of detail about what they did, which is I haven't seen Nasrallah talk in this much detail about an operation
It's true.
in a long time.
It's true.
So this is probably more natural for you to report than me.
Sure, yeah. So I mean, so they talked about the considerations that went into the operation were the targets, and the targets for the Fouad Shokr assassination were the Directorate of Military Intelligence, Amman, which is the IDF military intelligence, which is Israel's most uh, the primary intelligence agency of their number of intelligence agencies, the largest funded, the largest staffed, the most influential. And so they targeted their base north of Tel Aviv, which includes the military intelligence directorate with the spy equipment and the soldiers that are responsible for the psychological operations and the military intelligence in general, but also that has the Unit 8200, which is this sort of cyber warfare and signals intelligence directorate, I guess what you call it, unit. These are all these guys that then become Startup Nation, where they take IDF money and technology and globalize it and make money off it, selling Pegasus spyware and whatnot. So yeah, that base is 110 kilometers from the Lebanese border, he said, a suburb of Tel Aviv. He didn't know how to pronounce it, and I don't really either. Goliot? That was the
Maybe
central
maybe
target.
Galilot. There's two L's, so maybe Glilot, let's say
Yeah,
Glilot, and that's probably hard for an Arabic speaker.
yeah. It's hard for an English speaker too. But so that was the primary target, and then the sub target was the drone base where the signals intel the like the overwatch of the assassination would have taken place. So he's very clear about the targeting related to the assassination that could leave no doubt about what they were targeting, which I think is, again, a way that they're trying to keep this escalation in check. They don't want to be the ones to start World War III. And in their minds, Netanyahu is almost like braying for that, right? Like that's the thing that Netanyahu wants is it seems like the way he behaves is that he wants this regional war. Um, and Hezbollah and Iran aren't giving it to them. They're just continually, as you've pointed out, ratcheting up more and more the numbers of targets, I guess you could say, the number of attacks a day have been steadily increasing essentially since October. Um, and to the point where this week they're firing 200 rockets, 150 rockets every single day this week,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah,
significantly more than.
and I think it's partly that, but I think the flip side is also like very much the message is wherever it is in Israel, however far it is from Lebanon, however much Iron Dome there is in between, we can get it.
And we know where it is,
We
right?
know where it
We know
is.
where it is. And so Hezbollah released a video today that didn't show the rockets being launched. It was essentially just their maps going over what each of the bases that were targeted were and what was on those bases. Maybe we could talk about that in a minute, but it was just very clear targeting, very careful, precise targeting. And these bases were hit with drones. So that was specifically, they were not hit with the precision ballistic missiles, the
Hmm.
strategic missiles
No.
that were in the in the underground uh, missile base that we talked about last show, and that Hezbollah
Yeah, they
released the
showed that
videos.
video and then
Yeah,
they didn't use
and
that.
then they didn't use that.
So yeah, it's also a message of minimal, and he said this out in the speech as well, as this is what we can do with drones and the simplest rocket we have,
Yeah.
and not even a lot of that rocket. So 300, and he said out of generosity they went up to 340. We wanted to saturate the Iron Dome, get them to scramble their jets, and then make a pathway for the drones.
Yeah, kind of like the reverse of what Iran did. And
Yeah,
because of that, the reason for that is that the ballistic missiles would be devastating coming from so
that
close.
close.
Yeah. Whereas with Iran, the ballistic missiles had travel time that allows your air defenses to coordinate where to knock the missiles out in a way that the drones didn't. So I was very careful. I mean, I stayed up all night following it to see if it really was over. And it's a very careful operation.
A very careful single rung escalation.
Yeah.
Single rung escalation. And
Decisive rung though, for sure, no question. And we don't know the damage on these bases.
wait, yeah.
They haven't admitted to that.
No, they said it was like a hen farm, and then they made a quip about how it was a
Well, they
genocide.
showed, yeah, that's what they showed. They showed a chicken farm, which is what the Lebanese always say about Israeli strikes that hit these forests and hit these,
Okay. So
right?
they stole that. They stole that
They
little
stole
quip
it.
too.
Another one. That's
So the the description of this tactic of going first with the Katyusha rockets, opening the dome, basically using them to open the dome and go send the drones through the hole. And that's total success. And it's interesting because when the way that Iran did it in April, the way that Hezbollah did it today or yesterday, and the fact that they describe it in such detail kind of tells you that it's not a trick, right? It's not like something that depends on deception to work. It's a response to the available technologies. It's not necessarily the case that now that Israel knows they're going to do that, that Israel can do something different to thwart it.
no, and it's Israel revealing again another significant, like it's an escalation rung, but it's also a lot of valuable intelligence because it's the first time that Hezbollah has aimed that deep, right? And
Yeah.
Nasrallah made the point, like this is not Haifa,
Yeah,
right?
we
So
didn't want to. Yeah.
we've seen drone footage over Haifa, we've seen drone footage over the air base in the north, we've seen drone footage over the Golan, but this is suggesting now that they can get drones. You know, they're hitting their warships off the
Yeah.
Tel Aviv coast. They're hitting this base. They know exactly which base to target. You know, and if you were to flip it, like this is what Israel would say is the most valuable targets, right? Other than
Mhm.
their main campus in Tel Aviv, like to hit the specific military intelligence, to hit the Air Force base, that like the air traffic base, all those are very strong signals that they know what to hit and can hit it.
So now he gets then into debunking the Israeli version of the story. So the Israeli version, as we kind of lightly, with some levity, told, was that they saw something happening. They launched their planes. They destroyed a whole bunch of Hezbollah rockets and essentially foiled the attack. What remained was some scattered rockets that were shot down. And Nasrallah says, no. In fact, the Israelis did sense something coming. They started airstrikes in the south. They had no intelligence, but they saw the movement of the fighters starting their mission after dawn prayer. and they hit essentially, according to Nasrallah, none of the rocket launchers that launched rockets at Israel that day.
Not preemptively. They didn't knock out any of the launch
Right.
pads that were ready to fire. They
And
can
yeah,
knock them out after they fire,
right, which
but
is what he
that's not
said.
intelligence.
He said some of the ones after they were fired were destroyed, and he said this is very normal. It cost us $10,000 each. The lives of the fighters are worth much more to us. They abandoned those launch sites, and those were bombed. Like no big deal. The other thing was there were apparently sites in the valley that were that had been missile launch sites that Fouad Shokr had ordered evacuated long since, and that the Israelis hit. And so he was basically mocking them for hitting unused sites that had long been abandoned and crediting it as like one last thing that Fouad Shokr did to kind of defeat the Israeli intelligence
Yeah,
network
just to show their intelligence is stale too. So it's
behind.
in juxtaposition to Hezbollah knowing where these secret sites are, and Israel firing at long evacuated positions. They also said in the timing part, Nasrallah said it was the first time that they've launched drones from the Bekaa Valley,
Mhm.
which is interesting. So the deeper inside Lebanon. All the
First,
all the launch pads operated as they intended. Not one was hit before the launch. Yeah, that's what you just said.
other firsts were the first. He said he makes a note that this is the first major operation conducted in the absence of Fouad Shokr,
Yeah, of a senior commander,
and there were no errors.
and every drone crossed the border. He
Every
said.
drone crossed the
And
border.
interestingly, I don't know if you saw it. Did you see the photograph? An AFP journalist photographed one of the drones that just before it was hit, and it was the first time that we've seen
Oh,
the
no, I
first
didn't see that.
style of that drone that we had seen. So they sent a bunch of different types of drones. He made that clear too,
Yeah.
so that if you did see one, you didn't think that it was that they were all the same. So they sent a variety of drones, which was interesting.
He said they closed down Tel Aviv just over Katyusha rockets and drones. So imagine if we had used our ballistic missiles, which we
Yeah.
didn't.
Ben Gurion Airport was closed for a large chunk of time today.
So there's an interesting kind of troll that he did where he said, we're going to find out the damage. We're going to do our own investigation of the damage we did. And if it's insufficient, we will strike again.
Yeah.
So if the Israelis try too hard to, if the Israelis successfully hide all the damage, then they are basically compelling Hezbollah to follow up.
Yeah. And then he just took on the Israeli version of the story, right? Like, uh, which I just think is like the Israelis tried to get out ahead of this and say, and paint it as a victory. And even I listened to the news here in North America, NPR, BBC, CBC. I'm sorry that I do it still, but
Congratulations on that, on the fortitude to do that.
yeah, they Israel knows how to control a news cycle. They're
Yeah.
pros at it. They know when and how the media will report it. So they reported it as a successful operation and move on to the next part of the story.
Yeah.
So yeah, so not using any strategic precision guided ballistic missiles, he said. Um, and then he
So,
mocked the 2006, which was interesting. He
oh yeah, he
mocked.
kept making comparisons to 2006.
So in 2006, Dan Halutz, the chief of staff, he said that in the first hours of the July war that they had knocked out all of Hezbollah's rocket launching sites and that they had won the war. That was like that in the first 24 hours of the July war that went on for 50 whatever days, or I guess 34 days, I think it was. So it's just ridiculous. And Halutz was even mocked in Israel afterwards, and he was in the um, what was the report? I'm blanking on the name of the report. Um, anyways, their inquiry, their blue ribbon inquiry into what happened in the war that said they lost the war.
Right.
Um,
It was
Winograd, right?
somebody's name.
Winograd
Yeah,
Committee.
that's right.
Yeah. So he mocked 2006 and just mocked that kind of like claiming victory of the Israelis, which is just not serious, right? It's like, yeah, it makes
So,
Israel seem like they're a joke, like they're liars, but also it's a
but
joke.
what he did say though, which I think was important and not like his audience wanted to hear, I think was, we never said that we match their power, right? He said we don't we don't match their power. They have the Americans behind them. They have the whole West behind them. But and he said he talked a lot about how they didn't dare to hit civilians today, the Israelis. And he said they could. He said, I'm not saying that they won't or that they can't, but they could, but it's very complicated for them. So he's really trying to my sense was he's trying to kind of educate his audience. It reminded me of the way Chavez used to speak. It's like he's trying to give the audience an education in the way that he's thinking about it, the way that he's thinking about the way they think about it. He's like, look at it from their perspective. It's very complicated. They can't just up and decide to destroy Lebanon because they're going to be destroyed in turn. And so, but that doesn't mean that we can snap our fingers and destroy Israel either. Right. And that's, I keep going back to like Ali Jazini. He's that Lebanese military analyst. He's also a young guy. And he had this Twitter thread. He's been doing Twitter threads. He did one today too, along the similar line, but he said something like, this is a situation where one misstep can set the resistance back for a whole generation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Regional war is not good for anybody. And I think
Yeah.
any rational actor, I think there's a lot of people mad about the genocide,
Yeah. Yeah.
rightfully
Exactly.
so, and see this military power in Hezbollah that they're talking about all the time, and I just want to see
Yeah.
revenge.
Yeah. But no, but they don't have the military power to snap their fingers and stop the genocide. They don't have it. That power does not exist in the world. It certainly doesn't exist in the resistance axis, and I don't think it exists anywhere. Um, you know, that's why they've opted for this war of attrition, and the war of attrition does favor the resistance, but uh, but it's painful. It's painful, and Nasrallah, like there have been so many blowhards in the multi-decade battle of different Arab nations against Israel that it's like very different to hear like Nasrallah say we don't have they have more power than us. It's a complicated equation for them too.
Yeah, but they have been successful. The resistance has been successful through its resistance
Yeah,
in limiting that and limiting the effect on Lebanese civilians, because he's, again, like I said, he's talking to Lebanese, right? He knows that there's a global audience, but he's really talking to
yeah.
people in Lebanon, and that's why he comes out and speaks. And there's no spokesperson for Hezbollah, so he comes out and directly
Yeah.
answers to these things.
So what is it why does what did you understand when he said now people can calm down?
Well, that was their response, and that the I think that's really an interesting part of it, because we were wondering, are they going to respond all together? Do they see
Yeah.
this as an attack on all of the axis? Are all the different separate entities going to respond separately? And that's what we found out in this. And he wanted to, in a sense, he said we wanted to close the the case. He virtually said, like my notes say, is the case closed? Question mark. And he said, we'll see. Like you said, we'll see the results and see if it is. But that's him saying that it's closed, right? Like he doesn't want. He wants to say that this, you know,
And then it's back to support front because he said there we will continue. The support front continues. We will never stop until the aggression on Gaza stops.
yeah. And he said maybe one day we'll invade with our
Yes.
military band. That's how it ended.
Yes. So Lebanon is no longer a country. It's not like before where you could just invade Lebanon.
Yeah.
Um, the day may come where we invade you with a musical band, the music team. So yeah, it's a lot. It was yeah, like you said, a decisive rung, a single rung escalation. But they also said previous to Nasrallah's speech, their statement, the official Hezbollah statement said, we caution or we warn Israel against doing anything foolish because we will punish any retaliation for this retaliation,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
And it's true. Israel seemed to have been very careful with its targets. There was a great shot of Ali Murtada on Al Mayadeen, where Israel was just bombing the hillside behind him. He just kind of turns around and looks at it.
Did you see the
They're
split
just,
screen one where there's a Israeli journalist who hears a siren and just turns and runs?
oh
He
no,
just
that was
run.
the mayor. That was the
Oh,
mayor of Kiryat Shmona. And yeah, he
right.
just turns and he runs so fast. It's almost dangerous how fast he's
But there's
running.
like a split screen where they show Ali Mortada and then they show that guy and
Yeah.
their different reactions.
Yeah. I mean, they showed the Israelis released footage of them shooting down a drone with an attack helicopter. They're shooting down these, few $1,000 drones, and they're just spraying it with their automatic cannon, the 30 millimeter cannon, just firing. It took like 7 seconds to shoot down the drone of constant chain
Right.
gun
Right.
shoot, like where are those rounds going? And it's just, is that sustainable? The Iron Dome, like it was 300 rockets. Is it sustainable for Israel to believe that they could handle 6,000 rockets the way that they talked about it? Like there's no Iron Dome. There's not enough interceptors. There's not
Right.
enough interceptors for that. There's not enough Iron Dome batteries for that. If you want to get into 6,000, let
Yeah.
alone precision guided, if you just fire 6,000 Katyushas,
Yeah.
the Iron Dome can't handle that. It's not built. It's not built for an open war like that. They make it seem like it shoots down 90%. It doesn't. It
Right.
just simply doesn't. And just watching that footage, that was all that the Israelis they had this entire attack to show footage of them doing heroic
Stuff.
defensive things, and the only thing they could show they showed aerial refueling of their fighter jets, and they showed an attack helicopter spraying rounds of 30 millimeter can. It was like the size of a pop bottle,
At a
like
slow drone.
at a
One of the
super slow drone
yeah,
that is got this
traveling
little, you could see
speed of
its
a car.
propeller engine. Like,
So there are criticisms of this being, the Israelis are obviously trying to downplay it, and I think some people on the resistance side are feeling that. So I think Ali Jazini and some others have been like, no, no, this is you've got to think of how the resistance has to make these calculations. You can't look for this kind of satisfying explosion. It's a war of attrition. It doesn't change because of one attack.
yeah,
But like the other thing I wanted to say about that topic is the PFLP, Qassam, Abu Obaida, Syrian Socialist Party, Fatah Intifada, Saraya al-Quds, they've all made statements, kind of their blessing to giving their blessing to Hezbollah for this response.
which is very notable. It's
Yeah.
very notable, and for Abu Obaida to come out even with just text messages is it's significant.
Abu Obaida says, We congratulate the initial response operation by our brothers in Hezbollah to the assassination of Commander Fouad Shokr. We appreciate the great sacrifices of our people in Lebanon and its heroic resistance fighters. Hezbollah's operation reaffirms the shift in the strategic reality for the entity since Al-Aqsa flood. The enemy has no safety from retribution, and there are no limits to the possibility of striking it anywhere and from any front. All fronts will remain ablaze and escalating against the enemy as long as the aggression against our people and nation continues. So
Yeah.
all of them were in that kind of tone, but that's probably the one worth reading in its entirety.
Yeah. And then Qassam fired on Tel Aviv today as a sort of
Oh yeah. So
cherry on
yeah,
top.
tell us about the rocket they used, the
Well, they
M90 they
use their
called it?
long range rockets. They used their M90, they said they used, which is the rockets that reach Tel Aviv with a heavy payload. And they're the rockets that the Israelis keep saying that uh, they've removed the threat of these rockets.
Mhm.
And Qassam just keeps showing every once in a while, keeps showing like, no, you haven't. We just are choosing not to fire. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, in an area where the Israelis have pushed Palestinians into 10% of the Gaza Strip, so theoretically have the Israelis have freedom to operate in 90% of Gaza, and you can still fire these long range rockets with heavy payloads and get them through, which I think is, I have always been saying that I don't think that the rocket fire is the most important metric of the
Mhm.
success of the resistance, but it is a metric, and it is
Yeah.
it's interesting to see that timing, because like I don't know, are we done with Hezbollah?
I mean, unless
I
no,
don't think I
yes,
have
I think
anything
so.
else.
I don't, yeah, those are, yeah. His speech ended, his speech basically ended with saying, yeah, one day we
One
might
day we'll
invade
take
you
the Galilee with a marching
with
band.
a marching band. Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple other things he said. He said that the Israeli attack was not preemptive; it was an aggression. So it was
Yes, that's
separate
right.
from the intelligence that they saw the movements like you described. They saw the movements of fighters because they deployed all the rocket sites. All those fighters had to go to the rocket sites. So Israel saw activity, the same way they
Yeah.
saw it on October 7th. And this time, they had 100 fighter jets in the air, which is a lot of fighter jets,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. I mean,
two
yeah,
aircraft
I didn't know
carriers
they
full of
had
jets.
100. I didn't know they had 100.
Yeah.
I thought they had a couple dozen.
No, no, they've got a lot of fighter jets,
I
and they're
guess
getting
that's
a bunch more from that $20 billion deal. They've got dozens of F-35s. They've got
mhm.
F-16s and F-15s. Actually, F-15s are their workhorse.
Yeah.
Palestinians call them F-16s, but they're actually F-15s that do the heavy lifting. Yeah, so that
Yeah.
was interesting. It's not a preemptive strike, that it was not an intelligence. You said that. And then if we're moving to Gaza, just brutal scenes in the middle camps today of the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital in Deir al-Balah being evacuated, and just like literally 500 of the 600 patients that were in beds in that hospital are just being pushed down the dirt road in Deir al-Balah, and it's just brutal. It's just like that image alone should make Israel a pariah state permanently. It's just something that you can't even really imagine what that looks like. And I don't know if people in North America, I'm sure people that are listeners to this show are aware of this stuff. But this is something that like it would never be on the CBC watching them push, people with metal. I don't know what the word is for when they have metal in their bodies, but like
Prostheses. I don't know. I
the
also
like
don't know.
people attached to the bed with their
Yeah.
broken legs, and they're being pushed down the road. It's just a site. I mean, I don't know. There's so many horrific sites that we've seen, but that just one of them that was just that Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital is like one of the, I mean, it may be the only
Yeah,
hospital
I
that
think
has
it's the
been,
last one. Yeah.
yeah,
And then they've presumably kind of reactivated
they
some here and
reactivate
there.
other ones, but that's a very important hospital
Yeah.
to just be evacuated.
Yeah.
And they haven't operated on the Israelis haven't operated on the ground in Deir al-Balah yet. So I think the fear in Deir al-Balah is like, are we next? And they've watched
Yeah,
for
of
the
course they
last
are.
11 months what
Yeah.
that means. I don't know that that's totally clear yet. I'm not sure the Israelis have the forces for that,
Yeah. If they
but
have the forces for anything, it's for
they have
that.
the forces to make it a horror show
Yeah.
because everybody is packed into that area and people have not returned. Like there was a period where they were spread out even after the Rafah invasion. People were moved out of Rafah, and there were some of them were in Khan Yunis, but now they're operating in Khan Yunis too. And so everyone has just been pushed into Deir al-Balah, and it's just so criminal. While the
Yeah.
Americans are mobilizing, hundreds of billions of dollars of naval assets
To protect the genocide.
to protect the genocide, and no, you know, there's not even talk about one of those like medical ships pulling up on the coast of Gaza.
I'm kind of glad there isn't, honestly. I'm sick of that. The peer, like I'm just sick
Yeah,
of all of that stuff. It's
yeah, all
almost,
that pretense is definitely gone.
yeah. So I mean, it seems like there's no there's no shift. The resistance is counting on attrition and the resistance is counting on Israel collapsing. And they're probably right, but of course, Gaza is sacrificed and there's nothing that can save Gaza.
Guess you guys had tanky group therapy today.
Yeah.
We won't let this go into that then, but yeah. Yeah, but there's costs. There's costs to it for the Israelis. They're hit in the corridor again. They're claiming they were hit by a complex ambush.
Oh
Not that
yeah,
they're
there's
claiming. They acknowledged. I was going to say claimed casualties.
yeah.
But their field report, the IDF field report, matches the Qassam field report that there was a complex ambush in Zaytun because the Israelis are expanding the Netzarim corridor.
Yeah.
And then ever since that operation by the new recruits week and a half ago now, the Israelis have been destroying all those buildings that you saw in that, like probably like we talked about. That's the only thing the Israelis know how to do is
Yeah.
destroy. So they're widening the corridor because
Well,
that
if they
supply route
yeah.
was vulnerable.
So that's just more targets.
More targets. And
It's
all
more
the resistance
targets.
factions are still involved in hitting the Netzarim
Yeah.
corridor too. So
It's more targets and it's more opportunities and it's more casualties for the Israelis. So this is all planned for. It's just hard to watch.
it's hard to watch.
Um, I think that's it. I think we can call it.
Hang in
Um,
there, everyone.
hang in there. Yeah, hang in there. We'll see what the week brings. I mean, now if the last thing maybe to leave you with is if Hezbollah came to these conclusions that the time for waiting is ended, we can probably assume that Ansarullah and Iran are also somewhere on this calendar. So we'll be back for those.
Yeah, because they would let Hezbollah go first.
Yeah. All right. See you on the next one, everybody.
See you guys.